Question: what non-star trade candidates intrigue you for the Sacramento Kings? Obviously, you can go other here, but he has named a few names I have currently. For example, Matisse Thybulle, Malcolm Brogdon, Alex Caruso, Torrey Craig, PJ Washington, Royce O'Neal, Dorian Finney-Smith.
Can I just say yes? I just want them all. I'll take any of them.
Any of them?
I will take absolutely any of those guys.
Malcolm Brogdon is interesting. He's up in
He's definitely
Portland.
the best of all those guys, for sure.
He's the best. The question is, do you need him?
No. I don't know. That's kind of a tough one because he's a dude who's always kind of been like that. He's okay coming off the bench. I think, ideally he would be the backup point guard in this situation, kind of like what I assume the Celtics thought he would have been for them last year.
Right.
I think they could. I do think that would be a really steadying presence at the point guard position where you can just put the ball in his hands and feel good about it. And it takes the ball out of Malik's hands, which has its pluses and its minuses for sure. I wouldn't mind that. I don't know what Portland would want. I mean, funny enough, there's two guys on the list from Portland. Maybe like what would a Matisse Thybulle and Malcolm Brogdon, what would they want back from that? I don't know, because trading with Portland is just, it's a tough situation because what is their need? Like they probably want young guys.
They don't know.
They don't want, unless because they have Jeremy Grant too. So maybe there is a world where they think it might not be so bad to be slightly competitive, maybe competing for those play-in spots, because we saw the other day there's some talent there. Anthony Simons, Scoot Henderson,
Shaden Sharp back.
Got Shaden Sharp back. Maybe you trade
on that team.
Like it's not far away from being a semblance of a roster there that could do some damage. So yeah, it kind of comes up to what Portland wants, but I would love Malcolm Brogdon. He would be by far the best answer at backup point guard if he's willing to take it.
And we have to look at the contract situations. Yeah, there's no way. Matisse Thybulle, I know he hit a couple threes against the Kings, but who didn't when they played a couple nights ago? That guy averaging, and we talked about this with Vanderbilt. We'll talk. These are conversations that Chris and I have off air. We tend to go back and forth with the line of the defensive stopper and what they can provide offensively. And I'm probably putting Matisse Thybulle and Vanderbilt in similar categories, but I think Matisse is probably better offensively.
I think so. Yeah.
Barely.
Matisse is starting to hit his threes. I think he's at 39 or 40% nowadays from three on like 2 or 3 attempts. So I think that he's somebody who's at least figured out how to be on the floor.
39.6.
There you go. There you go. So yeah, if he's able to knock it down at that rate, I think the Kings can find 15 minutes for him for sure. The Vanderbilt thing is interesting because he's averaging like 1 point a game. No joke. That's
what I said.
Somehow not a joke. He's actually averaging a single point per game. But he does provide so much length and athleticism and kind of almost exactly what the Kings need defensively. But it is a question, and I've talked about it before. The Kings tried to throw out Mo Harkless into a starting lineup. They tried to throw KZ Okpala into the starting lineup last year. You got to, and they've also tried to put Davion. You can put Davion in that conversation as well. You have to provide some form of base layer of offense just to justify you being out there, because while yes, the Kings do need defensive help, their offense is where their bread is buttered. And if you're just a complete liability on the offensive end, if you just stall the offense while you're out there, that's a lot more detrimental than your defense being beneficial, unless you're just like Scottie freaking Pippen or something.
Right. And nowadays with everybody shooting or teams being so 3 heavy, it feels like, now I'm going old school here, it feels like it sticks out more when you don't have a shooter, because all you're doing is shooting.
Yeah.
So it's not that they're more disrespectful than they were back in the day. It's that so many people were getting to the paint.
Yeah.
You didn't have to, you were leaving people in a different way.
Totally.
You weren't just leaving them on an island the same way. So yeah, I think if you say Matisse and Brogdon, I don't know how Brogdon affects the Malik situation if we take a look at Brogdon's contract, but there's no way I'm doing Thybulle by himself.
I would think about. I mean, oh, if you're the Kings, you're saying,
depending on what they won. I mean,
I wouldn't mind Matisse Thybulle. I think he would fit into the rotation pretty nicely. And
who are you giving up for him though?
Yeah, I don't know. Again, yeah, I don't know what his value sits at anymore, because when he was in Philly, it felt like every team that was in a winning situation was like, we got to get Matisse Thybulle over here.
He was the hot name.
And now that he's in Portland, it just kind of feels like everyone's like, he doesn't exist anymore. And he's just not the same hot commodity that he was before. So with that said, I mean, it seems like the perceived value would be at best a late first round pick. If not, you could probably figure out some sort of player swap, player exchange that I think would make some sense. But I don't think Matisse Thybulle would really ask for that much. My number one with a bullet is absolutely Alex Caruso. For me, I think that's a dude who's just a winner, and he can play either the backup point guard or he can play the backup two. I honestly think he could steal a lot of minutes in terms of closing lineups. Like, he's the type of dude who you just want to have him on the floor when the game's being decided, because he's going to do something to win the game. He can knock down threes at a good enough level. He's one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA. He's also just like a hustle guy, which the Kings don't really have. Davion's a dog when it comes to on-ball defense, but you don't really see him. You see him dive on the floor a couple times, but Alex Caruso is one of those just lunatic maniacs who takes it to another level and is like diving into the crowd and just doing whatever it takes.
Yeah.
He's like the definition of what you would say is just a winning basketball player.
I would put JTA in that category, but I would put Alex Caruso higher up offensively. JTA doesn't do enough offensively to play him the minutes, and he's not as good defensively as Alex Caruso. So I think you have that on the Kings, but JTA just doesn't do enough.
He's not going to get minutes either.
Right. He does not do enough other stuff. 916-339-1140 if you want to be a part of the conversation. Like Sean, who wants to talk some Kings. What's up, Sean? You're on Sal's and Watkins, Sactown Sports.
What's up, guys? Hey, something I want to bring up. I think the most overrated common suggestion is you need to have defensive players on the floor. Because this is what I think. I think the more scoring you have, the better your chances of winning. And when the time comes to play defense, the Kings played defense last year, right? Game 4, Game 5 was kind of a letdown, but Game 6 was a great defensive game. Even in Game 7, if it wasn't for Steph, they had a good defensive game. So I think instead of seeing who could play defense, because you could unless if they're a Ron Artest type of defender, right, which there aren't many of them out there, I think you have to add to your strength, right? Get more scoring in there. I mean, we're basically getting 15 points a night out of the 2 and 3, right? So we need to add scoring. And then when the time comes to play defense, I think these guys will play defense because they played it last year when the time came to play defense. And one last thing before I go. I think it was a big mistake by Monty. He hasn't made many, but last year in Game 7, which is our biggest game of the season, Mike Brown didn't play Davion Mitchell, right? So there was some sign that Mike Brown does not trust Davion Mitchell. The time to move on from Davion Mitchell was last year, this offseason. Now that he's back, I don't know if he has any trade value left, but we have no backup point guard. Keon Ellis is giving us some minutes, but we need something more consistent, and that's where they have to kind of get another player to fit into a rotation.
No, thanks for the call, Sean. Good stuff. Yeah, I mean, going more offense, that's essentially what the Kings did in the offseason by bringing in a Sasha Vezenkov and bringing in guys that they think, hey, we're just going to continue to try to score. Now, the issue is, to what Sean talks about, you're not getting that production from, I think he said 2 and 3, but I think just between Harrison Barnes and Herter. That's the issue here. They're barely getting to 15 combined.
Yeah.
So you got to fix that. I will push back on not needing a defensive player.
I completely disagree.
Well, you cannot. It's interesting, though, because you could say, well, you can get better offensively and then the defense doesn't matter as much. That's why we're having conversations about a Brogdon and Thybulle trade, because that you need both.
Yeah, I mean, you need both, but at some point, like, you have enough offense, and getting a stop is just as valuable as getting a bucket. And you can, I mean, everybody's in the NBA. Everyone can make points. Like, we just saw what our boy Duop, whatever, scored 25 points.
Yeah.
Like, anybody on a given night can hit shots, but if you can slow a team down, that's the best way of being consistent every night. I mean, shots, you can be Keegan Murray, you can be Kevin Huerter, who we all know are good shooters, but for whatever reason, you can't hit a shot on a given night. Your defense can be there to save you. And that's why it's so important to play defense, because in a playoffs where it's 2 months and you're playing potentially an extra, 30 games or whatever, you're telling me you're going to be able to hit shots for what you need to win 4, you need to win 12 games or whatever, 16 games to win a championship. You're going to shoot well for 16 games. That's really tough to do. Maybe if you can play defense for 4 or 5 of those games, it just lightens the load. This team has to be better on the defensive end if they want to win championships. They cannot just get into shootouts and say we have better shooters than you, because that might be true most of the time or some of the time, but it's not going to be true all of the time.
They need somebody that can defend the wings, and they need somebody that can create their shot. And one more piece for Sean, I would say that, number one, the Kings lost to the Warriors. So even though, they turned it up and, okay, at the end there was Steph Curry. Well, Steph didn't score 100 and whatever points. He scored a lot, but he didn't score he went 50 piece, but he didn't score every point. So that's number one. Number two, if you had somebody, maybe you wouldn't have been in that situation. And number three, the Warriors basically got smacked by the Lakers, who got smacked by the Nuggets. So I don't think the Warriors were very good last season, is what I'm saying. So if you weren't able to,
and the Kings couldn't hit knockdown shots,
then they couldn't knock down shots, and you got to that game 7. If you had that defender, and to that point, Davion didn't play, but maybe if you had one more defensive piece, you're able to get through. So I wouldn't use last season's playoff. I can't even call it a run because you lost in the first series. I wouldn't use that to use it as a example of the Kings turning it up. All right, got to get to a break. When we get back, De'Aaron Fox hits a career-high 7 threes in that loss. What can he do to truly be a part of the MVP conversation? Styles and Watkins, Sactown Sports.